The sun glistened off the silver wings of Flight 2287 as it prepared to depart from JFK International Airport. Passengers hustled down the jet bridge, each carrying a story, a destination, and a purpose. Among them was a woman few would remember at first glance, Amara Lewis, a quiet, composed black woman in her early 30s. Dressed simply in a grey sweater and jeans, she slid into seat 12 billions, put on her neck pillow, and closed her eyes. The hum of chatter filled the cabin. A businessman argued over Bluetooth about stocks. A mother tried to calm her crying toddler, and a young couple snapped selfies by the window. The plane smelled faintly of coffee and recycled air. Everything seemed normal, until it wasn't. 30 minutes after takeoff, turbulence jolted the aircraft. The captain's calm voice echoed through the speakers. "Ladies and gentlemen, please fasten your seatbelts. We're experiencing some light turbulence." His voice, though steady, carried a subtle edge of unease. Moments later, a flight attendant rushed past the rows, whispering urgently to another crew member near the galley. Their faces turned pale. Something was wrong. Very wrong. In the cockpit, Captain Reynolds was drenched in sweat. His co-pilot, Officer Brooks, clutched his chest. I can't breathe," Brooks gasped. Reynolds radioed for medical assistance, but it was too late. His CO pilot collapsed beside him, unconscious. Panic rippled through the cockpit. The autopilot held, but they were on a flight path heading directly into a developing storm system over the Atlantic. The captain's voice broke over the intercom, trembling slightly. "Ladies and gentlemen, if there's a licensed pilot on board, please, make yourself known." Gasps echoed through the cabin. The businessman from row 10 muttered, "You've got to be kidding me." The flight attendants exchanged nervous glances. No one moved. In seat 12B, Amara stirred, her serene face still calm beneath her curls. She removed her neck pillow and blinked slowly, observing the chaos around her. A flight attendant ran down the aisle, asking passengers row by row, "Is anyone a pilot? Please, anyone?" When she reached Amara's row, the attendant barely looked at her. "Miss, please stay calm, we're handling it," she said quickly before moving on. Amara's eyes followed her briefly. Her heartbeat was steady, her mind clear. She unbuckled her seatbelt and stood. "Excuse me," she said softly, but her voice carried authority. The nearby passengers turned. The attendant paused mid-aisle. "Ma'am, please remain seated. I'm a pilot," Amara interrupted. The entire section fell silent. Even the businessman stopped talking. A middle-aged man a few rows back scoffed, "You? You're kidding, right?" Amara tilted her head slightly, unfazed. "I'm certified on both commercial and military aircraft," she said, her tone calm, professional, absolute. The flight attendant hesitated, torn between disbelief and desperation. "Please, come with me," she finally said. As Amara followed her down the aisle, whispers erupted. "She's really a pilot? She doesn't look like one. She's so young," but Amara didn't care. Years of flight training had taught her to tune out the noise. Every step toward the cockpit felt heavier as she sensed the gravity of what awaited her. When she entered the cockpit, the captain turned toward her, his face pale. "Who are you?" "Amara Lewis, former U.S. Air Force," she replied simply, her eyes scanning the panel. "Status?" Reynolds blinked, momentarily stunned by her composure. "CO pilots down, medical emergency, autopilot's holding, but we're losing altitude slowly. I've already called ATC for emergency guidance." "Good," she said, sliding into the co-pilot's seat with practiced precision. Her fingers danced across the controls, checking altitude, heading, and fuel levels. "We need to stabilize our climb and avoid the storm front at bearing 212. The captain glanced at her again, uncertain whether to trust her. "You sure you're—" Amara turned to him, eyes steady. "Captain, either you let me help you land this plane, or we both go down trying—" Something in her tone, steel wrapped in calm, cut through his hesitation. He nodded. "All right, Lieutenant Lewis. Let's fly." Outside, lightning flashed in the distance, illuminating clouds like the gates of chaos. Inside, Amara took control, her hands sure, her voice steady as she began calling out instrument readings. For the first time since takeoff, the captain exhaled. Hope returned to the cabin. No one yet knew who the quiet woman in 12 billions truly was, or that she had once been one of the youngest Air Force test pilots in the country. But soon, the world would know her name. The cockpit hummed with tension as rain streaked across the windshield like 1,000 racing needles. Flight 2287 sliced through clouds that flashed white with lightning. Captain Reynolds clutched the yoke, his knuckles pale. Beside him, Amara Lewis adjusted the altitude control, her expression unreadable beneath the pulsing glow of the instrument panel. "Level us at 28,000 feet, she instructed, her voice cutting through the static-filled radio chatter. Reynolds obeyed without question. The sound of her composure was grounding, almost commanding. "ATC, this is Flight 2287 declaring medical emergency," the captain called out. "CO pilot incapacitated, requesting immediate guidance to alternate landing strip." The radio crackled. "Copy, 2287. We have you on radar. Stand by for reroute. Stand by." Amara frowned slightly. The turbulence worsened. She could feel the plane fighting against the wind currents, each gust pushing against the metal bird like a giant's hand. "We don't have time to wait," she murmured. "We need to change heading before that cumulonimbus swallows us whole." Reynolds shot her a look. "You sure you can handle that storm cell?" Amara's lips curved faintly, almost amused. "I've handled worse. Iraq, 2015, sandstorm, zero visibility. This? Just rain with attitude." The captain blinked, half in disbelief, half in admiration. Back in the cabin, panic brewed. Passengers clutched their armrests. The air felt heavy with fear. The flight attendants tried to maintain calm, offering reassurance that felt more like hope than certainty. In seat 12A, the businessman from before muttered, "We're trusting our lives to her? A passenger?" The woman beside him snapped, "She's the only one doing anything. Maybe you should thank her," but Amara wasn't thinking about them. Her world had shrunk to the panel of instruments before her. Airspeed, 310 knots. Altitude, dropping. Fuel, sufficient. The storm radar glowed red. Massive turbulence ahead. She flipped the comm switch. "Flight 2287 requesting permission to divert to Bermuda International. Weather is deteriorating rapidly." "Permission granted, 2287, the controller replied, his voice faint but firm. "Runway 12L cleared for emergency descent. Winds at 40 knots, cross-current from the west." Reynolds exhaled sharply. "That's a tricky one." Amara didn't look up. "I like a challenge." Another violent shake rattled the aircraft. The oxygen masks dropped suddenly, swinging in the cabin like ghostly pendulums. Screams erupted. A flight attendant's voice echoed through the intercom, trembling. "Everyone stay calm and fasten your seatbelts." In the cockpit, a warning alarm blared. "Stall warning! Stall warning!" Amara's eyes darted to the speed indicator, airspeed plummeting. "We're losing lift. Push the nose down, throttle up," she commanded. Reynolds obeyed instantly. The engines roared, straining against the wind. For a few terrifying seconds, the plane seemed to hang suspended in the air, trembling between gravity and defiance. Then, slowly, it stabilized. Reynolds looked at her with disbelief. "You just saved us from a stall." "Saved us?" Amara smirked. "We're not safe yet." The cockpit door opened suddenly. A flight attendant stood there, her face pale. "Captain, the passengers are panicking. And someone's having a heart issue in row 15. Reynolds turned to Amara. "Can you handle controls alone for a minute?" She nodded without hesitation. "Go, I've got her." As the captain left, the cockpit door sealed shut and silence returned. Amara exhaled deeply, her hands steady on the controls. Rain drummed on the glass. Her reflection stared back at her, calm, unbroken, unafraid. Her mind drifted, briefly, to memories buried deep, her father's voice on the airfield years ago. "Fly like the sky owes you nothing, Amara. Respect it or it'll humble you." She smiled faintly. "Still listening, Dad." Then came another jolt, stronger this time. The right engine warning light flickered amber. She scanned the gauges. "Engine 2 pressure low," she muttered. A crackling sound came from outside, followed by a flash of lightning that illuminated the storm's furious core. Her radio came alive again. "Flight 2287, Bermuda radar losing contact. Are you maintaining course?" Amara's hand gripped the yoke. "Affirmative, Bermuda. We're steady—" A sudden explosion of static interrupted her. "The radio died, of course," she whispered, shaking her head. "Comms failure too. Why not?" Back in the cabin, the calm woman in sunglasses, seat 14D, watched her closely when Amara passed earlier. Now, that woman removed her glasses, revealing sharp, intelligent eyes filled with recognition. She murmured under her breath, "Lewis? Amara Lewis, the test pilot from Air Force Command?" But no one heard her. Inside the cockpit, Amara was already switching to manual backup systems, breathing evenly. "You're not taking them today," she said to the storm. "Not on my watch." Lightning split the sky, thunder roared like cannon fire, and Amara Lewis guided the jet through the chaos with precision only years of training could produce. Passengers clung to hope they couldn't see. The captain, now returning to his seat, stared at her as if witnessing the impossible. She gave him a quick nod. "Hold tight, Captain. We're almost through." And for the first time in what felt like forever, he believed her. Rain pounded against the fuselage, thunder rolling like drums of war. Flight 2287 trembled through the storm's heart, every flash of lightning turning the cabin into a flickering nightmare. Amara Lewis gripped the controls, eyes scanning the instrument panel. The storm radar bled red and orange, turbulence so severe it looked alive. "Altitude, at 28,000 feet, she said firmly. "Wind shears shifting. Adjusting course to 245. Captain Reynolds struggled to keep his hands steady. Sweat rolled down his temple. "Our instruments are fluctuating. Autopilot's disengaged again." "Manual it is," Amara replied, unbothered. She had flown combat aircraft through worse, machines that barely held together under enemy fire. This was chaos, yes, but it was a familiar kind of chaos. One she could tame. The cabin lights flickered. Gasps spread through the passengers like wildfire. Someone screamed as the plane dipped sharply. Oxygen masks swung again. The flight attendants were strapped in, whispering prayers. Amara fought the yoke, leveling the nose. "Reynolds, re-engage auxiliary hydraulics. We're getting drag on the right wing." He nodded, flipping switches rapidly. "Got it. Stabilizing pressure. Now." The plane leveled, momentarily calm, but then came the sound every pilot dreads, a deep, grinding rumble followed by a pop. The right engine sputtered. Warning alarms blared. "Engine 2 failure," Amara announced, her voice steady even as adrenaline flooded her veins. "We're down one." Reynolds swore under his breath. "We can't make Bermuda on one engine through this wind." Amara's fingers moved swiftly across the panel, calculating. "Then we don't aim for Bermuda. Nearest alternative is the Azores, 400 miles northeast. It's a risk, but so is staying here." She grabbed the radio mic. "Mayday, mayday, mayday. This is flight 2287 declaring emergency. Engine failure, severe turbulence, and co-pilot incapacitated. Requesting emergency landing clearance at nearest available airfield." Static. Nothing. The storm had swallowed their signal whole. Reynolds' voice broke through the hum. "We're blind, Amara. No radio, one engine, and 50,000 pounds of panic in the back." Amara glanced at him, her calm piercing through the chaos. "We're not blind. We have instincts, we have training, and we're still flying." "That's enough." In the cabin, passengers clutched hands. The businessman from before began sobbing quietly. A little girl in row 20 cried out, "Mummy, are we going to fall?" Her mother hushed her through tears. The woman in sunglasses, now watching intently, stood and approached a flight attendant. "Tell the captain, tell the woman flying that she's not alone. She's got backup if she needs it." The attendant blinked. "Ma'am, you can't..." But before she could finish, the woman revealed a small identification badge clipped to her blouse. Federal Aviation Administration. The attendant's eyes widened. "Your FAA?" "Yes," she said quietly. "And I know who's flying that plane. You have no idea how lucky we are." Back in the cockpit, Amara was guiding the plane through violent crosswinds. Every muscle in her arms screamed from the resistance, but she didn't waver. Reynolds looked over at her, studying her poise. "You really were Air Force, weren't you?" 18 years, she replied, eyes fixed on the horizon. "Test division, flew prototypes no sane person would touch. Got grounded after an accident that wasn't my fault." He blinked. "Grounded? They grounded you?" She gave a dry laugh. "Politics. Happens to the best of us." Lightning illuminated her face. The determination, the quiet storm within her. The instruments beeped again, altimeter dropping fast. Amara cursed softly. "Downdraft! Hold on!" The plane plunged, cabin screaming, gravity pulling everything down. Coffee cups, papers, phones, everything flew. Reynolds pulled back on the controls with all his strength. "We're not climbing, come on, come on." Amara slammed the throttle forward. "Angle 10 degrees up, don't fight the gust, work with it." For a tense, breathless moment, the aircraft felt weightless. Then, like a swimmer breaking through to the surface, it rose again. Cheers erupted from the cabin below. People cried, laughed, prayed aloud. Reynolds gasped, trembling. "You just saved us again." Amara exhaled slowly, eyes still locked forward. "We're not out yet." "But we're close." She checked her instruments. The storm's radar glow was fading. They were breaking through the outer wall. The dark sky ahead lightened to silver grey. "Once we're clear, we'll stabilize altitude and glide toward Azores manually," she said. Reynolds nodded weakly. "Remind me to buy you the biggest drink of your life when we land." Amara's lips twitched. "Make it coffee. Strong." In the cabin, the FAA woman watched the cockpit door, her jaw tight. "She's flying on sheer will," she whispered to herself. "Just like she used to." Lightning flashed one last time, but this time it was distant, harmless. The storm behind them began to fade into the endless grey of the Atlantic morning. For the first time in hours, Amara leaned back slightly, releasing a breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. Reynolds smiled faintly. "Miss Lewis, whoever grounded you made the biggest mistake of their life." Amara didn't answer. She just looked out the window at the sky slowly clearing, calm, infinite, and hers again. The storm had finally loosened its grip, but the sky was still grey and trembling. Flight 2287 glided over the Atlantic, one engine dead, communications down, and every soul aboard hanging on Amara Lewis's calm voice. "Speed 250 knots, she said, eyes scanning the instruments. "Flaps at 10. We'll begin descent in 60 seconds. Captain Reynolds nodded, still shaken but obedient. "Manual controls holding steady." "Good," she replied. "Keep it that way." Down below, the passengers were silent. The same crowd that had doubted her now watched the cockpit door with reverence. Some prayed, some cried, others just stared at the seatbelt sign as though it were a lifeline. The FAA officer in sunglasses moved up the aisle, her badge now visible. When a flight attendant hesitated, she said softly, "Tell Miss Lewis, Azores runway 12 is clear. Weather reports say mild crosswind, manageable." The attendant nodded and hurried forward. Inside the cockpit, Amara leaned slightly toward the window, scanning the distance. The horizon was breaking open. Through the thinning mist, a faint strip of land appeared, green, shimmering, like salvation itself. "Visual confirmation," she said quietly. "Runway in sight." Reynolds exhaled deeply, his shoulders slumping. "I can't believe we're actually going to make it." Amara's hand stayed firm on the controls. "We haven't landed yet." A sudden gust rocked the plane sideways. The passengers gasped. Amara's grip tightened instantly. "Crosswind's picking up," she warned, adjusting approach angle to compensate. She spoke the words like a mantra, her tone steady, her movements precise. Years of training and buried instincts converged into one singular moment. "Landing gear, deploy," she ordered. Reynolds pulled the lever. A mechanical thump echoed beneath them. Gear down and locked. The radio crackled faintly. Static, then a broken voice. "Flight 2287. Runway, clear for landing." Amara's lips twitched upward. "Copy that," she murmured, though no one heard her reply. Rain still streaked across the windshield, but now the light was breaking through it, soft golden beams piercing the storm clouds. The sea below sparkled like shards of glass. "Final approach," she said. "Flaps 30, speed 175. The aircraft trembled as it descended, slicing through wind currents that refused to let go. The island loomed larger, the runway coming into view, long, dark, wet and narrow. Reynolds swallowed. "Crosswinds are shifting to 15 knots. "You sure?" Amara shot him a look. "I've got it." He nodded silently. In the cabin, the FAA officer held her breath. "Come on, Amara," she whispered. "Show them what you're made of." The altimeter dropped. 500 feet, 300, 200. The nose wavered slightly as another gust hit. Alarms blinked red. "Hold steady," Amara whispered to herself. "Trust the air." Her hands moved like a conductor's. Gentle corrections, micro-adjustments. The plane kissed the runway with a bone-jarring thud, bounced once, then settled hard. Tires screamed against the wet asphalt. "Reverse thrust," she called. Reynolds engaged it. The roar of deceleration filled the cabin. Luggage shifted. Passengers cried out. Then, slowly, finally, the aircraft rolled to a stop. Silence. Then applause erupted. It started with a single clap, then another, until the entire cabin thundered with cheers. People stood, sobbing, hugging strangers. The businessman who once doubted her wiped tears from his eyes. "She saved us," he whispered. In the cockpit, Amara sat still for a moment, eyes closed, breathing deeply. She could feel every muscle in her body tremble with exhaustion. Reynolds removed his headset, staring at her with awe. "I've been flying for 23 years, he said quietly. "I've never seen anything like that." Amara opened her eyes. "You've now seen what happens when people stop underestimating women who look like me." He smiled, humbled. "You've got my respect, Captain Lewis." She blinked at the title, then chuckled softly. "It's been a long time since anyone called me that." Outside, emergency vehicles sped down the runway. The storm clouds parted just enough to reveal streaks of sunlight breaking through. The world felt reborn. When the cockpit door opened, the FAA officer stepped in, removing her sunglasses completely. Her expression softened. "You really haven't lost your touch," she said. Amara's brows lifted slightly. "Harper?" The woman smiled. "You remember me?" "Hard to forget my former commanding officer," Amara said, a faint grin appearing. "You still bossing pilots around?" Harper chuckled. "Only the good ones. I'll make sure the world knows what happened here today." Amara shook her head. "Just tell them we landed. That's enough." But Harper leaned closer. "No, Amara. They need to know you saved them. The quiet woman in 12B who did what no one else could." Amara looked out at the golden horizon. "I didn't do it for them to know. I did it because it was right." The flight attendants opened cabin doors. Cool ocean air rushed in, washing away the fear that had filled the plane for hours. Passengers descended the stairs, some stopping to thank her, others simply nodding in silent gratitude. As Amara stepped off the aircraft last, the sunlight fell fully across her face. For the first time in years, she felt whole again. She turned to Harper. "So what now?" Harper smiled. "Now? You fly again." Amara looked back at the plane, Flight 2287, the flight that changed everything, and smiled. "Maybe I already am." And as the sun broke fully through the clouds, bathing the tarmac in gold, Amara Lewis walked forward, head high, leaving behind the storm that had once tried to ground her.